So I'm asking a question this morning, and it's in the title of the sermon. Ready for the question? Are you an innie or an outie? Now, probably by me asking this, you are led to believe that I'm talking about something that is not the subject of my sermon. Believe me when I say I am completely disinterested in the state of your belly button. Although it seems to be a little more important than even I think. I was just doing a casual look around this week. Apparently, plastic surgery on your belly button is a thing. There is a way, I guess, some people are disappointed in theirs. I have no idea what that means. I'm certain that I do not want to know what that means. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about maybe something a little more important in Mark chapter 7 when I ask this question. I'm going to be reading from Mark chapter 7, verses 6 through 16. I'll miss some verses in the middle here. Jesus is talking, and he said, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. Well, that's a way to start a conversation. As it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human traditions. Thus, you nullify the word of God by your tradition that you've handed down. That's starting in verse 13. And you do many things like that. And again, Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside of a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. Some of you know that what is on the outside is not usually a good reflection, maybe, of what is on the inside. Have you ever heard someone say something that you know they didn't mean? Have you been in a room where people are having a conversation and everybody in the conversation will be an upcoming contestant in the passive-aggressive Olympics? Oh, nice dress. Color looks good on you. The little tone, you know that they're hiding behind the nice words. It's betraying something that's on the inside. In fact, our words can often be a purposeful distraction. If not all of our outward life can be a purposeful, intentional evasion of what is going on our inside. We even do this in our everyday conversation. You pass people by on a street or a mall. Hi, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And you go on. Now, if it's a friend, you might see something. How you doing? Fine. Stop. I want to know how you're doing. And then they can it's that second how you doing rule. The first how you doing is just kind of a formality. The second one, if you know the person, gives them an opportunity to really tell you. Sometimes we hide behind a cheerful disposition and words that everything is always going well. In fact, a lot of us have little catchphrases. How you doing? Fair to middling. How you doing? I'll make it through, Lord willing, if the creek don't rise. How you doing? Just trying to get back to the line of scrimmage. Some of those are yours. All of us have seen the seemingly happy married couple suddenly split. We have seen the outwardly, apparently happy person suddenly make a disastrous decision. And we say, what happened? Well, a lot of us saw the outward, while the inward reality was something completely different. We tend to want to hide a range of things behind a happy facade. Now, let me stop right here because I think it's worth stopping. if you are one who is hiding behind, you're hiding just this brew of deep, deep disappointment or sadness or bitterness or anger, let me stop right here. Please don't do that, especially here. Let people love you. Let people in. Let others help carry your burden. What is out in the open cannot hurt you near as much as what you are forcing down and keeping hidden. So always have an outlet. Let this be your outlet. Mark is telling us in these words of Jesus that it is often a very long way from the heart to the lips. And I'm not talking about distance that can be measured with a tape measure. It's a long way, often literally and figuratively. There's a principle here. The principle is this: the words that are spoken are not nearly as important as what we do. The facade that we put on is not nearly as important as what is raging underneath the surface. You've often heard the illustration of a duck that is seemingly motionlessly gliding along the surface of the pond, but you don't see underneath the water, and the feet going furiously. God is far more concerned with your interior reality than He is with your exterior facade. And the problem is we live in a culture that is often much more concerned with the exterior facade than the inward reality. It's coming to Christmas, and I know when you go to a mall, first of all, there's hardly any malls left. Secondly, the malls that are here, there's hardly any stores left. But I bet here in about a month, you can go into Macy's. And Macy's, starting at Christmas time, you'll go in on one of those busy weekends. There will be an army of people in black applying makeup to a bunch of people there in the front of the store, working on everybody's facade. I am not denigrating that. If the barn needs painting, paint the barn. I get it. We have everything. The curb appeal of the house. The kitchen being the in colors right now, especially comes time to sell it. You want to have this color, not this color. Oh, that color, that's so 90s. I have no idea what that means, but apparently it's a thing. The style of carpeting, all this, things are concerns. Our automobiles we drive. I don't know about you, but every time I buy a car, it's exactly the same thing. This is about 20 years ago. We said, we don't want to buy a car that everybody else, the color that everybody else has. And so we went in and we bought a 1999 Chrysler minivan. It was a deep forest green until we bought it and drove it off the lot and got to the store, and we realized that everybody else was buying a deep forest green minivan in 1999. And then the next one, we got a color that we haven't seen until we bought it. And then pretty soon we found out that, yes, everybody else is buying that color. We're very concerned about the exterior. In the 1920s, Henry Ford, when he was making the Model T, said, we're trying to make a car that's affordable for the everyman. Every family can have a car, and they can have it in any color they want so long that it's black. See, this is also true in life. A happy home is not the home with curb appeal or the exact color of the exterior. It's a home with love and peace on the inside, where everyone feels safe. So we all have misleading facades. We live in a world of misleading facades. And Jesus is dealing with this issue when there was in His world this danger. People were worried about pollution that came from without. There were certain ways they were supposed to wash their hands, certain procedures to wash their dishes. It wasn't an issue if it was clean from a germ perspective, but whether it was ceremonially pure. In the first century, there's a group of people called the Essenes. John the Baptist might have been one, and they spent a lot of time out by the Dead Sea, and it was their job to copy Old Testament scripture. And what they would do is they would sit down and they'd have an old, let's say, copy of Isaiah, and they'd be copying it down, and then they'd come to the word God. It'd be, Yahweh or Jehovah or Elohim, regardless of what word it was. And when they got to that word, they got up from the table. They walked over to a ritual bath called a mikveh. They would disrobe, dip in the water, arise and put on a fresh garment and write that word, get back up from the table, take that garment off, dip themselves in the ceremonial bath again, and put on the original garments to keep writing. It wasn't a concern with whether they were clean. It wasn't a concern with whether they smelled good. It wasn't any of those things. It was they had to ritualistically do these things, ceremonially do these things so they could be pure. They also had ways to live life. We know the story of the Good Samaritan. Samaritan fell into the hands of thieves and was beaten and left for dead by the side of the road. And the first two people that came alongside of him was a priest and a Levite. Both served in the religious community in a public way. And both of them saw him and avoided him. Sometimes we read that and think it's because they didn't care or had no heart. But their religion told them that if they touched blood, they were impure. And if they'd have gone over there and checked on the man and he'd have been dead, they'd have even been more ceremonially impure. And had to go through a long process. And they did not want to be polluted from the outside. All of these were based on the same idea, that there's stuff out there that might pollute me. One bad apple spoils the whole batch. You've heard that. We don't do anything like that today, thankfully, except when we do. Oh, look at that poor guy by the side of the church changing his tire. I'd love to help him, but I got my good clothes on. Can't get them dirty. I can't hang out with that person. Other people might think less of me. I can't be seen there. That might stain me. We do it in ways like that all the time. And in ways, I understand the impetus, but what we end up doing after a while is we effectively wall ourselves off from everybody else. And we feel very good about our life and our righteousness and all that sort of thing. I've said it before, there are times, it happens to me most here in the winter when I'll referee a few high school basketball games, or in the summer where I go golfing and get put with someone I don't know. And the conversation always comes around with what I do for a living. I let it slip out. I'm a pastor. And then they spend the next 20 minutes apologizing to me because when they missed the putt, they threw the club and then they let out a string of words that begins with F. They used it as a verb, an adverb, a noun, and an adjective all in the same sentence. And they spend the rest of the time apologizing. And I tell them, really, you should stop. I'm not your concern here. Don't worry about me. Let's just, because all of a sudden they're worried about it. Well, if they are, I can't control it, but I can control whether I am. And my challenge to everyone here is I hope you have someone in your life that is doing something or involved with something that they shouldn't be. I hope you have someone in your life that you know a lot who needs the grace of Jesus Christ. And that you can be this intentional person in their life that's always pointing the way toward Jesus. They need someone like that in their life. We need someone like that in our life. We even have people, I saw it again this week. Parents, if you dress up your child like Bugs Bunny and have him go to the neighbors and get a Kit Kat bar by saying trick or treat, they're worshiping the devil. Really? That seems a bit extreme. That seems to be a stretch. You know, there are people who do that. But sometimes a neighbor who buys the smashed witch decoration at Walmart and ties it to their tree, perhaps they just thought it was funny and thought they'd spend $10.95. And that's as far as it went. The ways that sometimes we find to wall ourselves off from everybody else. Stop. Let me do a commercial here because I find myself, my inner Paul, trying to get out, which happens from time to time. In 1 Corinthians chapter 8, the church in Corinth wrote Paul and said, Paul, there's people in this church, you wouldn't believe what they're doing. They're eating meat that's been sacrificed to idols. I saw them buy it, and they've cooked it up, and they're at church, and they're giving it to everybody else. You need to tell them to stop. And Paul writes and says, are you ready? What's the big deal? You know that an idol is nothing. It's a block of wood. It's nothing. Stop treating it like it's something. That's my paraphrase of 1 Corinthians 8. Our focus as a church, our focus as individual people, at some point in life needs to be on them. Whoever the them is in your life. And what should be obvious by now is the reason why we do it is what is on the inside is what counts for all of us. Now, please take this next rant in the humorous way it's intended. I think it is a good thing that I do not walk around my society and hit people over the head with a shovel. Because Lord knows there's a lot of people that need to get hit in the head with a shovel. Now, I'm only interested in hitting the people that need to be hit. Not everybody. See, there are two problems here. The first problem is there is, again, a vast amount of people that I think deserve it. Secondly, the second problem would be the fact that I'm roaming around wanting to do it. Christianity at its heart is not about just keeping me from doing the violence that I want or expressing the anger that I would like to. Christianity is about me not wanting to do the violence. And about replacing the hate and indifference that so easily can reign in our lives with love and grace. In another gospel we read, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. That same gospel says, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery. I will tell you, anyone who lusts. You see, there's a different level. In both, what is intended is to get to the heart of the matter. Jesus was always about getting to the inside, to the interior world, and this is still where the battle is fought. Paul writes in Colossians 1:27 about this mystery that's been kept hidden for ages, but has now been revealed to us, and that is Christ in you, the hope of glory. If that's not enough, Ephesians chapter 3 begs that we might know this love, so that we can be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Notice the wording here. Not that you may be covered externally to the measure of all the fullness of God, but filled internally. So let me ask again. Are you an innie or an outie? An outie is certainly possible. Most of the world does it. They don't do it very well, but most of the world does it. But the problem with being an outie, you have to keep track of so much stuff. You have to keep track of what you said here. You have to keep track of what face you put on over there. You have to keep track of what this looks like that doesn't match up with this on the inside. I think that after a while it just gets exhausting. And so in essence, when I ask, are you an innie or an outie, with, of course, a concern with everybody here being an innie, in essence, I'm asking you to, here's this word again, simplify. We don't have to keep track of so much stuff in life. That's all our challenge. The problem with being an innie is when God wants to do something, He wants to do it in us. And most of the time, we have filled our insides with so much, there's just not that much room to soak up anything. We might have to let go of the grudge, let go of the bitterness, unpack the greed, take this disappointment out. We got to start self-emptying and pouring out and asking God to fill us and to look inside and take away whatever doesn't need to be there. So there's room for us to be filled. Now, I love a fresh coat of paint. So just a couple weeks ago, those of you, when you come into our house, for years we had this little white metal railing that goes up the staircase. And then we have a kind of a big atrium-like ceiling and a second floor with that white metal railing was around it. The problem is there was some gaps about this big between the metal rails. In other words, enough for a 2-year-old to take a head dive off the second floor. So we decided that since we had like a 14-month-old at the time who sometimes came to our house, that we needed to change that up. So we talked to some people and they came and they took our money in May. They got around to doing the job at the end of September, but that's another story. And so end of September, they came and they took out the white metal railing and they put in some nice oak balusters all the way up the staircase and then a railing and oak all around the top. And so what they did was, they originally said they weren't going to do it this way. They put all the railing in, and then once it was in, then the painter guy came with the stain. Now, they did a fine job. But guess what the house smelled like for about a week? It smelled like stain. And about the time that faded, he came back to apply the varnish. So we've had some interesting... So I love a fresh coat of paint, not nasally, visually. It makes everything look so clean and new most of the time. Here's the problem. Even the best paint is eventually only as good as the quality of the wood that's underneath it. Once the wood goes bad, the paint will only look good for a brief period of time. The wood flakes off and decays and the paint goes with it. Think of a balloon. I actually thought about doing this, blowing up a balloon up here. And I can start exerting the pressure. And as soon as the pressure from the outside overcomes the pressure from the inside, pop. I'd be scared a balloon pops in my face, so I decided not to do that. The lesson for both, whether it's the wood or the balloon, is the same. What is on the inside will always find its way out. What's on the inside will always rise to the surface. Which is why I think here in Mark chapter 7, Jesus' concern is always what's on the inside. Nothing outside of a man or nothing outside a person can make them unclean by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that makes us unclean. My question this week is, first, are you an innie or an outie? The second one is, when it comes time to have a conversation with the Father, are you willing to let Him do the work on the inside? Because that's where it's needed. And it's where it'll be effective. And it's where you're going to find the most change.